So today's webinar is about how to stockpile $100,000 in 15 years. Now, it sounds like a long time, I know, but it is something that's certainly doable. Let me get my screen ready here for you. All right, so how to stockpile in 15 years, $100,000. So I think it's certainly doable that anybody can do that. It doesn't sound like people can do it, but you certainly can. And, you know, how much money have you saved over the last 5, 10, or even 15 years? If you're like most people, you probably haven't done as well as you would have liked. But the fact is, it's relatively easy to amass a considerable amount of money in a reasonable amount of time. All it takes is consistency and unwavering consistency, actually. But like anything else, to be successful over the long haul, you'll need to be realistic and have a realistic plan that you can live with. So what does it take to save $100,000 in 15 years? Well, it takes about $300 a month. Now, do you think you have $300 a month? You probably do, actually. And we're going to show you how to do that and go over different scenarios that you can actually accomplish that. But first, we're going to look at the math. Now, over time, the stock market has delivered a return of about 10.8%, and 15 years is a long enough time period to expect a similar return. When one considers the state of the economy right now, this may be one of the best times you can invest regularly and do pretty well, because since 2007, the stock market has gone up actually pretty well. At 10.8% interest, you would need to save $215 a month to accumulate $100,000 in 15 years. But we're going to be conservative and assume that we're only going to earn 8% annually. So at 8%, it would take about $280 a month to save $100,000 in 15 years. We're going to be even more conservative than that and just call it a flat $300, just to make the math easier, okay? If everybody goes and everything goes as well as it should, $300 a month at 10.8%, the long-term stock market average would result in about $141,000. While you could simply save $300 a month, there's always a way to do it. What if you could actually increase your income or decrease your expenses and increase your assets? Then you wouldn't really notice the pain of saving $300 every single month nearly as much, because you can offset it by those other methods as well. All right, so let's talk about this stuff here. Assets. So what are assets? Technically, anything that you have that you could really be exchanged for money is considered an asset. But it's a pretty lousy definition when you're trying to build personal wealth. For our purposes, let's define an asset as something that is purchased or acquired for the purpose of generating income into the future. That'll also eliminate many things that you might have considered previously that may have been an asset in your eyes before. So actually, again here, an asset is anything that's purchased or acquired for the purpose of generating income in the future. So your car is most likely not an asset unless you really have an antique or something like that, because a car is likely going to be worth less every single year. Actually, when you drive it off the lot, it actually depreciates really quickly. Like I said before, a collectible car that's purchased with the belief that it would be worth more money someday, that can be considered an asset. Your house may or may not be considered an asset, though it is usually a relatively safe vehicle, and you kind of consider it to store your wealth, but really not considered an asset in most cases. Essentially, all of your household items would not be assets by our definition, so don't count your TV and your lawn furniture and so on as your assets. Now, some things that would meet our definition of an asset: stocks, bonds, real estate that is purposefully bought out as an asset, any collectible item that is purposely bought as an asset, investment accounts, retirement accounts, a business that you own, and so on. And that list is obviously not exclusive. So let me go on here, and I'm a little bit ahead of myself with the slides, but let's go into debts. We also need to consider debt, obviously, because not just assets. We want to consider everything. Debt is the total amount of money that's owed. It's pretty simple, right? Now, for our purposes, this is it's not really a sufficient definition, right? Having $1 million worth of assets sounds great, but what if you have $2 million worth of debt? You're not going to be nearly as well off as someone with $1 million in assets and no debt. So the numbers, you have to really put them in perspective with each other. So building your assets. So what we really want to do, ideally, is to ultimately build net assets, not just assets, but underline the word net assets. So net assets equals assets minus your debt. So if your asset total is $200,000 and your debts are $130,000, your net assets would be $70,000. So $200,000 minus $130,000 equals a net asset of $70,000. Now I'm going to talk about different categories here: budgeting and saving, investing, manage debt, minimizing the effects of taxes, and protecting your wealth. Let's go with the first one here, which is budgeting and saving. Now, under most circumstances, if you're going to be accumulating assets, you need to purchase them. To have the money to purchase them, you'll need to save some money. Consistently saving money is a lot easier if you have a budget. So to begin getting your finances under control, it's really a great idea to get the family together and spend a few hours creating a budget. You do a budget about once every year on a spreadsheet, entering in all of your projected expenditures for the next year. Then you compare what you think you're going to spend with your actual income. So how do they match up? This is a good approach to planning ahead and confirming that you're living within your means. It'll also give you an idea of how much you'll have left over for actually acquiring assets, because, again, assets creates more money. Then a good idea is to sort out the expenses in descending order. This way you can see how the bulk of your money is being spent. Frequently, people spend a disproportionate amount of money on relatively small, amount of time on relatively small amounts of money. An example would be clipping coupons to save 50 cents or driving a few miles to save a penny on gas. Now, coupons are fine and saving money on gas is fine, but in the big scheme of things, you're spending too much time doing that, or you're spending money on gas just to get there to save a few cents. Now, coupons are fine if the bigger stuff has been eliminated for the possible savings first. By sorting your expenses, you can focus your attention on reducing the larger obligations. After the big stuff has been reviewed, then you can give, I'm not sure why this is showing up here, but I'll pull it over to the side. Now, again, by sorting your expenses, you can focus your attention on reducing the larger obligations. After the big stuff has been reviewed, then you can give some attention to the little stuff. And the little stuff, by all means, can still add up. But let's look at the bigger stuff first, like your mortgage payment. Can you refinance it? Well, interest rates are pretty low right now. It's possible to refinance. Could you move to a less expensive home possibly? And an area you may be able to cut down on in your home budget is the amount of money you spend on food, especially if you eat out a lot. Consider how much you're spending over the course of a year eating lunch out every day, eating dinner out, and ordering dinner in. So it's a lot more than most people think. To get a good idea of what other families are spending compared to yours, you'll want to check out the Consumer Expenditure Survey from the U.S. Department of Labor, and there's a specific website that you can go to do that. That's www.blboyls.gov/CEX. Again, bls.gov/CEX. And that's a pretty comprehensive information on the expenses of U.S. consumers in pretty good detail. Now, the other thing also, and I'll talk about this later on, is you want to break the linear equation of trading time for money. And I talk about this all the time. Instead of trading your time for money, working an hour to get paid an hour, work a week to get paid a week. And if you can break that to try to not have your income depend on what you're physically doing, that's a major step in the right direction. Now, you want to try these additional ideas when making a budget as well. Consider your expenses for the entire year. Even $4 a day for fancy coffee at Starbucks or something like that adds up to $1,460. That's $1,460 over the course of a year. Over time, cutting small expenditures from day-to-day living can really add up. Include emergency and long-time savings as an item in your budget. Okay? Long-term savings and emergency savings in your budget as well. Set aside some money for emergencies or surprise expenditures is always a smart move, like your muffler breaking down or something like that. Maybe you need some money as a buffer for, to pay your rent over maybe 6 months or your mortgage and so on. You want to budget money for investing. It's just as important as the other stuff on your budget. Now, ideally, you want to be saving on other items to free up as much money as possible for your investments, because investments make more money. So this is the first step towards building your wealth and increasing your assets. You're always going to be hearing about how important it is to pay yourself first. That's exactly what this is. Saving money has to be a priority with some emotion behind it, and it's not, or else it's not going to happen, right? So you have to put it a priority in your life to pay yourself first, and this way it's going to be happening really quickly. Now, how hard are you going to try to save money now? It may benefit you to spend a few minutes reflecting on how different your life would be once you have a substantial amount of savings. What will your life be like then? Does that please you? Taking the time to savor those positive emotions are going to help you be motivated to find ways to make that lifestyle a reality, because people are living longer and longer lives, so you don't want to have your life outlive your money. All right, so how do you start finding $300 a month? All right, okay, before we kind of established how you could stockpile $100,000 in 15 years, if you could just come up with $300 a month to allocate towards those savings. Then we mentioned how you might be able to find it merely by establishing a budget and cut out some unnecessary expenses. And if you're still looking for ideas, what I'm going to talk about now is going to give you some other ways to free up some of those funds. Now, according to recent statistics, each year about 75% of American taxpayers receive a federal tax refund. Of those, the average refund is approximately $3,000. If you could receive anywhere near that amount, it's amazing to think of how you almost have $3,600 a year. I'm sorry. You'd be having $3,000 toward that $3,600, and you just put your tax refund in there. Let me see if I got the right slide here. Okay. Now, think about that. If the average person is getting $3,000 in tax refunds a year, about 75% of taxpayers, and you're trying to save $3,600 a year, well, that's $3,000 toward that $3,600. So either you can continue to save towards that $3,600 and have that much more, or you have $3,000 towards your $3,600 already, and then you'll be able to get the rest of it no sweat. All right, so did you ever imagine how you could have $100,000 in 15 years by investing your tax refund? Well, that's exactly how you do it. All you do is, like I said, make up the difference, and that could be only $50 a month after you put your $3,000 in there. So here's some other ways you can do that with $50 a month. You can take your lunch to work twice a week instead of eating out. You can use some coupons in your grocery shopping. You only need $12.50 a week in savings, right? Mow lawns or shovel driveways, or take $50 off your cable or cell phone bills to be able to help you there. Have a garage sale. You might be able to sell some things, do blogging, work online. Pay yourself maybe $1.75 a day. Take $1.75 out of your wallet and put it into your change jar each day. That comes out to $52 every 30 days. So there's a lot of different ways you can do that. And like I said on here also, join a second income type of program like a network marketing program as well. And regardless of where the money comes from, you have to start putting it away, and it'll add up like nobody's business. So like I said before, starting a business like a network marketing business is a way to be able to make more money, especially in your free time. When you get home, do you sit down and just watch TV and don't do anything else? Well, you want to be able to use some of that free time to generate money as well too, okay? So remember, you only need $300 a month to reach your goal, so you wouldn't be looking to start a business to replace your current job. So you want to start it off slow. What could you do in your free time to bring in an extra $300 a month? And we all know the answer to that, don't we, guys, right? Think along the lines of providing value to other people. When you provide value, people are going to be gladly paying you for it. So there's a lot of ideas you can do that. Provide services to people. If you're good with your hands, landscaping, changing oils on cars, shoveling snow, walking dogs, doing tax returns, bookkeeping, writing articles, all sorts of different things. And as we know, network marketing is a way to do that as well and do it very, very easily. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that, and maybe starting an online business and so on. You can sell equipment, materials, write an ebook and sell it, sell things on eBay, sell things on Fiverr.com. There's so many different ways you can do it, and this way that $300 nut to crack every single month isn't that bad. So now on this slide, you want to think of it maybe as paying yourself $10 a day. Sometimes thinking in terms, in very small terms, can help you accumulate a large sum of money. If you're seeking $3,600 a year, that's just under $10 a day, which is $9.86 a day. What can you do to come up with $10 a day? Well, some days you might save it from your expense money, okay, for a day like that, like by not going out to eat that day maybe. Some days you might perform a service for someone to earn it. Some days you might just take it out of your wallet and put it into your savings jar or savings account. On the days where you realize more than $10, like when you perform a service for $50, you can use that extra count towards the next few days. In one example, when you perform a service for, say, $50, you've got your $10 for the next 5 days. If you make $100 from a garage sale, you have $10 for the next 10 days. And achieving small goals that add up to big goals can be much easier to accomplish than just working towards the larger goal. So if finding $10 a day is easier for you, then use that strategy. However, if you find money investing your funds and so on, it can enable you to reach your big prize, the $100,000, years sooner than just by savings. So let's look at investing, because that's a way you can start having your money make you money. All right, so one of the biggest things about your quest to stockpile $100,000 in 15 years is that along your journey, you'll learn many things that you can bring to your life, such as wealth and prosperity. In other words, this one quest has the capability of setting you up for life if you take advantage of what you learn along the way. Because sometimes it's not just the getting to that goal of $100,000, it's what you learn along the way, right? So you're learning investing techniques and wealth building techniques and so on. So there's two important mental steps to take at the beginning of your path to the prosperity of $100,000. The first step is to realize that the more money you spend in your lifetime on income-producing assets, the wealthier you're going to ultimately become. Because most of the time, people buy stuff which don't generate them money instead of buying things that generate them assets. The second step is to understand that time counts for a lot. The sooner you get started, the more you're going to accumulate. There's a Chinese saying that when's the best time to plant a tree? Yesterday, right? When's the second best time? That's today. So just remember, an asset is anything that you acquire for future income. And let's take a look at some income strategies that you can use for your assets. So investing is putting your money to work for you. Essentially, it's a unique way that you want to think about building your money. Growing up, the majority of us were taught that you can make an income only by getting a regular job, working 5 days a week or so, which is precisely what most people do. There's one significant challenge with this line of thinking, and if you want more money, you simply have to work more hours. That's, like I said, linear income. However, there's only so many hours that you can work in a week or a month and so on, and you just burn out. Many people try to do that, and they get the second job, third job, and so on, and that just burns them out. It just doesn't work. You can't make a clone of yourself to boost your income on the job, so instead you must spend an extension of yourself at work. In this case, that extension of yourself is your money. So again, extension of yourself is your money because you want your money to be able to work for you. That way, while you're working for your employer or even sleeping or reading a book or hanging out with your friends, you could also be earning money in other places. Making your money work increases your earning power regardless of whether you're not getting a raise, choose to work overtime, or look for a better paying job. There's so many ways to invest. This would include things like putting your money in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or real estate, or starting a business, like a network marketing business, for instance. Every investment vehicle has positives and negatives, of course. The significant point to think about is the method is not as important as actually going out and doing it. Now, if you consistently put your money into income-producing assets, so your money is always working for you, your wealth was going to definitely increase. Now, let me talk about a few different things that's going to compound your income, like compound interest. Compounding is the idea of creating income on an asset reinvested in the earnings. The only requirement is that you actually reinvest the earnings and time. This is one of the fundamental reasons why it's so important to get started early, because you want to have time on your side. The more time your investments have to work for you, the more income you're ultimately going to be able to generate from those businesses. Now let's take a look at a real world example, okay? If you were to invest $10,000 at 6% interest, you would have a total of $10,600 after a year. Now, you have the option of taking that extra $600 and spending it on a weekday in a city or something like that, or you could leave it there and let that income work for you. If you leave it alone, at the end of the next year, you would have $11,236. Reinvesting the $600 resulted in earning $636, which is $36 more than you had the first year. That might not seem like a lot now, but that interest and compounding on the interest is really what's going to increase over time, big time. After the third year, your investment would grow to $11,910.16. That year, the year you earned $674.16, which is $74 more than you earned in year one, and so on and so on and so on. This consistent increase in the total amount earned each year is compounding, which is simply earnings generated, even more earnings over time. The $10,000 invested at 6% would eventually grow to $32,000 and change in 20 years, $57,000 and change in 30 years, and in 50 years, $184,000. Now keep in mind that these amounts would be totals if you never put any more money into the original $10,000 investment. You just let it compound interest, multiply over time, and you never put any more money into it. Now these calculations are they're approximate. Okay, I didn't want to read them all out to you, but these calculations really show the power of compound interest and having time on your side for your investments. Now you want to take advantage of the compound interest for your $100,000 goal. Now I've already talked about investing $300 a month that can get you to that point. And this is also going to be part due to earning compound interest on the investments that you're using as well. After all, you'd invest $3,600 a year for 15 years. You've only put in $54,000. The other $46,000 is interest that would accumulate as you go. All right, so let me go on here. How would you like to put in less than $54,000 and increase the amount of interest that gets you to your goal instead? Well, the strategy is to invest a sum right now at the beginning of the 15 years, like a larger sum. This sum would be kind of what I call a windfall that maybe you recently received, or perhaps you have an extra car that you want to sell, or something that's going to give you an amount of money that you can put in towards that $100,000 right up front. Maybe if you have several unneeded items you could sell, or have a garage sale or something like that. Now, every $1,000 that you invest at the very beginning of the process is worth almost $3,500 after 15 years at 8%. Let me say that again. For every $1,000 you put in at the very beginning of the time, the 15 years, at 8%, $1,000 equals $3,500. So that is an incredible increase if you can put the money there up front, which goes towards your final goal, which makes it easier over time. So if you did 10.8% and not 8%, it would go from $3,500 to $5,400. So that's only 2.8% different. So let's say if you sold the car or other items for $5,000 and invested that at the beginning, you could end up with an extra $17,500 at 8% or $27,000 at 10.8% of your $100,000. This amount could go a long way towards cutting down the amount of money that you need to find each month, right? So again, $5,000 would equal almost $27,000 at the end of that time. So that's an extra $22,000 that you didn't have to find along the way. So it makes it a lot easier. Or you can just keep on trying to find that money, and then you're going to have even more than the money you need later on. So any funds you can put towards it at the very beginning, you can have time compound for you, which will be a lot better for yourself. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, risk tolerance. As an investor, you have a few other things to consider about how to grow your money. It's important to base your investment decisions on these principal factors. Okay, safety of the capital, your current income, and the rate of capital appreciation. These factors, in turn, will be dependent on your age and personal circumstances. Let me give you an example. A 70-year-old surviving off his retirement portfolio is much more concerned with preserving the value of his investments than a 35-year-old business executive. The young executive doesn't need the income for his investments to survive, so he can afford to be more aggressive chasing investment returns. Your financial position will also affect your objectives. If you're already quite wealthy, your goals are likely to be much different than those if you're 20-something and a newlywed couple. If you're a multimillionaire, $200,000 in a highly speculative investment might not be a bad idea. How much would your life actually change if you lost it all? Not much if you have a lot of money, right? But so you can choose to do speculation type of thing, which is higher risk but higher return. If you're just starting out and trying to save a down payment for your first home, your needs require you to be a lot more conservative. In general, the shorter your time, the more conservative you should be. For instance, if you're investing for retirement at age 25, you still have plenty of time to make up for your losses that you might suffer along the way because you have time on your side. Younger investors also don't have to invest as much money to end up in the same place as someone that's getting started later in life. The point is to get started somewhere. Remember, your compounding example that I showed you before and how time can compound into that. It's because if you have time, you start out earlier, you don't have to put as much into it, and the compounding can actually add to your bottom line. But if you're starting later on, you're still going to have the compounding there, but the time is going to make a big difference and not have as much. Okay. On the other hand, if you're nearing retirement age, it becomes more important to not lose the money that you've accumulated. You'll be accessing the money soon, so it'll need to be in investments that support that as well. In applying these principles to your goal of $100,000 in 15 years, it makes more sense to be a little more aggressive with your investments at the beginning of the 15 years. In the last couple of years, you may want to change to a more secure investment if you have a need for that $100,000 all at once at a specific target date. Or you might want to consider your investments and keep on continuing to put in there just to accumulate even more if you don't need the money right away. So your risk tolerance will depend a lot on when you need the money and what you want to use the money for. So the next thing is your personality. Are you in love with sports cars, skydiving, or you live to have risk? Or is your idea of exciting ventures is just getting out of the house, all right? So that's your personality and what you're willing to risk. Peter Lynch is a great investor, and he once said that the key organ for investing is the stomach and not the brain. So how much risk is right for you? That's up to you. I can't answer that, and some people can live with more risk than other people. If you can't sleep at night because you're worrying about your investments, you're probably gone too far. Another thing to consider is your ability and willingness to do necessary research. If you love to crunch numbers and do market research, then just about any investment opportunity is open for you. If you'd rather not do a whole lot of work, or you feel that you don't have the expertise to do the work, something that requires less investigation is probably in order for you. Now, we've discussed some of the primary factors that determine risk tolerance. Just keep in mind that everybody's situation is different, and there can always be additional factors to consider, which obviously I can't cover right now. Now, consider your risk tolerance before you dive into any kind of investing. Now, before deciding which investment vehicles are appropriate for your circumstances, you'll need to understand the features and exactly what makes them suitable for a particular investing goal. One thing is bonds. Most people aren't familiar with what bonds are, but bonds are considered to be fixed income securities because you know how much you're going to be making from them before you purchase them. This assumes, of course, that the bond issuer actually pays you. So the amounts are set. It's just a question of the level of risk that you want to take. When you purchase a bond, you're lending your money to a company or a government. In return, they agree to pay you interest on your loan to them, and then at the end, pay you back the money that you loaned them. The main appeal of bonds is a relative safety feeling that people get. When buying bonds from a stable government or municipality or company, your investment is virtually guaranteed or risk-free. This minimal risk comes at a price because there's such a little risk. The interest that is paid out on the bond holders is relatively small. So the rate of return on bonds is usually lower than other investments. Bonds are all issued with a risk rating of AAA down to D or possibly C depending on the company. AAA bonds have essentially zero risk and therefore do not pay a lot of interest. The returns on D bonds are pretty good, but there's also a considerable risk of the company or government issuing the bond defaulting and then not making any payments to you. Now on the bottom of the screen, stocks. Stocks are usually referred to as equities by professionals, giving you a part ownership of the business. So you're buying a small portion of, say, McDonald's or something like that. This ownership provides you with the right to vote on important issues that affect the company and entitles you to receive any profits that are distributed to the stockholders. These profits that are paid out are usually referred as dividends. While bonds provide a steady flow of income, stocks typically don't. Most companies don't pay dividends and instead reinvest any profits. Stocks also don't provide a predetermined income like bonds. Their share price fluctuates consistently depending on what the investors are willing to pay for the shares, and there's no guarantee. When you're talking about stocks that don't pay dividends, the only way you can make money is to buy and sell shares and earn money from that. The advantage over bonds is that stocks have a greater potential to give a higher rate of return. Of course, the higher rate of return comes with a higher risk as well. Let's talk about mutual funds. A mutual fund is an assortment of stocks and bonds chosen by a professional money manager. When you purchase shares in a mutual fund, you're combining your money with a large number of other investors, and this enables you as kind of part of the group to compensate a professional manager for investing for you because of their expertise. Mutual funds are usually established with a specific investing strategy in mind. Their distinct focus can be practically anything, really. Large or small stocks, bond issued by governments, bond issued by companies, both stocks and bonds, stocks in specific industries, stocks in particular countries, and many, many more. And some funds called index funds seek to really mimic the performance of a specific stock or index like the NSYE or the NASDAQ, for example. The primary benefit of a mutual fund is that your money is diversified without you having to spend a lot of time or acquire the expertise or experience in choosing different investments. You just kind of pick the group that you want to invest in and let someone else that's a professional do it for you. Now, in theory, you should get a better return by investing your money with a professional than you would by choosing your investments yourself. But mutual funds have some limitations. There are always fees associated with owning shares of mutual funds, and this is how the employees or the money managers of the fund get paid and how the fund company pays its bills. Now, laws regarding how much of any individual company they can own and the types of investments they can make and more. Also limit the flexibility of mutual funds. This is an advantage an individual investor has over other mutual funds. Now, mutual funds also typically have a lot of money to invest. So investing in small companies typically doesn't affect their bottom line a lot since they can't own more than a specific percentage of any specific company. Now, alternative investments, and I'm just going to cover this briefly, options, futures, forex, gold, real estate, and so on. And these investments tend to be more complex and have a higher level of risk. If you're interested in any of these types of investments, you want to be sure to fully research the risk, advantage, and strategies by using them in your portfolio. But I typically like to do futures and so on, and options and so on. So I found that they're relatively safe if you know what you're doing and if you're educated on the subject to trade them. All right, so managing your debt. We covered savings and investing your money. Now we need to talk about debt. After you've saved all your money, you need to decide if the best move is to pay on any debt that you have or invest the money. Really, a simple rule is if you invest on your debt, is it greater than the likely rate of return on your investment? If it is, then you should consider paying out the debt. All right, let me give an example of that. It doesn't make any sense to invest in a bond that pays 4% if you're paying 17% on your credit card, right? You would pay off the credit card. You might be asking, what is the likely rate of return for a stock? Well, most experts can kind of figure maybe 7.5% as a pretty reasonable expectation on stocks. So any debt that's charging you more than 7.5% interest should be paid before any real investing is going on. However, the first priority should be to save several months of living expenses as a buffer just in case something happens to your overall income. And after you've done this, then it's time to get busy and start to invest your money so your money makes you money. So you always want to remember that any debt is equivalent to an anti-investment. It's just added weight that's slowing you down and slowing down your financial process. So you want to eliminate any additional use of your credit cards. Don't close the account since it'll negatively affect your credit score. And do whatever you can to stop using credit cards. This can include cutting them up or kind of locking them away so you don't have to use them. So we're going to look at credit card debt specifically since it's so common and the interest rates are normally pretty high. If you can get rid of anything like this, it's probably better to do that right away first than last. And the very first step in eliminating your debt through credit cards is to kind of put them away and not use them, okay? You want to make sure, like I said before, don't close the accounts because that'll affect your FICO score as your debt-to-income ratio would be thrown out of whack. So make sure you take care of that in the proper way. There's really two main strategies to choose from when you're paying off your credit card debt. Number one is to start with the highest interest rate, pay the minimum payment on all your other cards, and put everything else towards this one. When you're done, you want to move on to card number two. And this is the most effective strategy, but not for everybody, because in number two, you start with the one that has the smallest balance and pay the minimum on the others. This strategy is not mathematically as good, but it's psychologically easier for some people to do that because they're snowballing from getting rid of, say, 5 credit cards to getting rid of one quicker because the balance is smaller and not necessarily the interest rate that they're concerned about, and psychologically they can handle that much better. All right, coming down to the home stretch. We're going to go into taxes. So taxes are a necessary part of life, as many people don't like to pay them, but they are. It's also the other principal thing, along with debt, that can really hamper your asset acquisition efforts. Taxes are, well, I hate the screen here, but taxes are, again, it's necessary, it's just the way it is, and we have to deal with it. So here are some basic strategies for minimizing the effect that taxes have on your wealth. You make use of tax-deferred accounts whenever possible, and some examples can include IRAs, and this would include both traditional and Roth IRAs, company 401ks, and not only can you put in pre-tax earnings, but employers also typically match up to a certain percentage of your salary if they do that, and if they do it, fantastic. You definitely want to take advantage of that. Now, other versions of the 401k is they're similar to 401ks for those that are self-employed, okay? And you can look into that by talking to your accountant as well. Now, you want to keep in mind that when making your investments, everyone has two tax rates for investments. The first one is capital gains tax, which is the same for everybody. And the second tax rate is your marginal tax rate, which can be found on the IRS website and largely depends on your income along with other things. The only thing you really need to know is which one is higher for you. Typically, the capital gains tax is a lower one of the two unless your income is quite low. So with all this information, you can better plan your investing. So here's how you do it. Stocks that are held for more than 1 year and then sold are taxed at capital gains rate. Especially all bonds and any stocks that are held for less than 1 year are taxed at a marginal tax rate. That means that if you have one or more accounts that are tax deferred, you should ideally hold bonds and short-term stock trades in those accounts, assuming that your marginal tax rate is higher than the capital gains rate. And the long-term stock holdings should ideally also be held in tax-deferred accounts and so on. So I'm going to skip through here a little bit because I want to just get over here to the conclusion. And because I know, when I'm talking about capital gains and things like that, talk to your accountant. They're going to start, talking to you about that if you're not familiar with things like that. And it's kind of a good thing to worry about because that means your money is making you money. But you want to really protect your wealth, and there's several aspects that are going into protecting your assets and your wealth. You want to set up protection from potential legal actions against you, of course, and avoid the temptation to spend your wealth before you're done needing the accumulation of your assets. So really, in conclusion, building assets is really just a function of budgeting, savings, investing, reducing your debt, and then protecting those assets. And like any other long journey, you have to start really somewhere. So today is the beginning to start doing that, because I know when you're doing it and you're getting started with it, it seems like you're not getting anywhere, but it builds up over time. Because as you start to do this, you're going to see after a while you start really getting in the flow, and it starts to steamroll. And you start to see, hey, it's really picking up, and I'm starting to get more and more money in there, and you start really to get the hang of it. Between the expenses that you'll reduce or eliminate and the extra income that you can generate, the $300 a month isn't that really insurmountable after all if you really kind of break it down as I did today. It's easy to see that saving a lot of money isn't a function of either having a large income or forcing yourself to live without electricity. Saving money is a function of consistency over time. You want to eliminate the waste from your financial life, increase your income slightly, and invest consistently over time. And that's really all there really is to it. Okay, you want to refer to the example I mentioned about compound interest, and that's going to help you as well, too, to understand how to do that. Now, as we kind of conclude on here, because I have to go to our corporate call in about 15 minutes, the big thing we talked about with network marketing in your asset creation is because it takes advantage of many of these different principles. Many of the different principles that I talked about on our conference calls is leverage, duplication, residual income. A lot of that has to do with what we talked about today, okay? It's kind of like compounding interest, right? When you're compounding your interest, it's making you money over time. Now here, with our compensation plan and the 2x2 system, you're compounding that over time with multiple people and having the income through leverage of those people. And then as you jump up to the 50, 100, 200, 400, 800, you're actually increasing that dramatically because you have your money leveraging. Just like the compounding interest I mentioned before, The compounding of your money by having the 25 leveraged to the 50, have it leveraged to the 100, to 200, to 400, to 800, that's really, it's kind of like compounding interest on steroids, I guess you can say, right? So you want to have that compound over time, and to do that as quickly as possible. Now, I mentioned before also trying to put a lump sum up front first to get yourself there a lot quicker. Well, how does that relate to our compensation plan? Well, you jump up to the higher levels as quick as possible. You don't stay at the 25. If you have money to put into it right now, you join the 50, 100, 200, 400, 800, or whatever you can afford to get up to those higher levels quickly at the beginning, because your money can compound that much faster. Just like the scenario I gave you before of having some money up front, which is going to compound that much more in the long term. A lot of people just aren't familiar with delayed gratification, and they want everything like right now. And in our compensation plan, we obviously have it for them right now, but you have to look long term as well too. And sometimes people are in such dire straits financially, they're trying to look past tomorrow, and they just can't look past today because they have so many bills to pay and so on. And I'm going to go crazy, but I don't know why this is doing this, but it is, so I'll have to figure it out later on. But you know, so you want to look long term, and when you're talking to your people as they're coming into the program, make sure you tell them when they make the money, don't go out and spend it, reinvest it in their business, and immediately jump up to the $50 level, and immediately jump up to the 100 as soon as possible. And they don't have to wait until they cycle. Once the money comes in, jump to the next level, because it's going to be quicker, faster, and they're going to make money quicker, faster, and have that story to tell their people as well too. So it all kind of works synergistically together, and it'll help your ultimate cycler business really kind of get along the road that much quicker. So I want to thank everybody for coming on the webinar today. Hopefully this was helpful for you. This will be up in the back office by tomorrow, so if you want to watch it again, that'd be great. And I do apologize for the screen coming up here, but I guess I could have just clicked on it and it would have changed, but I didn't have a chance to read it. But hopefully this was helpful. If you could pick just a few items out of here to really help your business and help your savings and help yourself be able to generate money long term, and that will certainly be something I'll be very proud about, that maybe I opened some windows for you as well. So thanks again, everybody. I look forward to seeing you real soon. I'll be on the call in about 10 minutes. Bye for now.